Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein, beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Kevin Klein. Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. I am joined by two of my colleagues from the Winnipeg Sun. We have Lawrence Pinsky, KC, a former human rights adjudicator, and Royce Koop, who is also a professor of political sciences at the University of Manitoba. It has been a roller coaster week in Canadian politics. There's things happening all across the country. We've got BC finally admitting that the free drug program might have been a mistake. Might have been a mistake. We better pull that. But you've got the NDP in Manitoba wanting to do more. They're talking about doing the free drug program. They're talking about safe consumption sites. You've got the issues that happen in Minneapolis. I think we have to talk about that from a Canadian perspective. I think Wab Kinew calling out Trump and calling him a third world country because of what happened is wrong, and is certainly not the right move for a politician to make when we're in the middle of negotiations. We'll talk a little bit too about what happened in Manitoba when the progressive conservative Manitoba leader decided that after a Facebook post that really wasn't that bad, can no longer be a member of the party. He's not going to run for the party. And we'll talk about that. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the NDP and some event that they have their logo attached to that really is quite sickening, to be quite frank. But gentlemen, I want to start with China. And I want to talk about that Canadian journalist, that one that I spoke to, said that this is the first time while traveling with the Prime Minister, they said, leave your phones at home and get yourself a burner phone because we don't want you going into China with your regular phone because we're afraid that they'll spy on you. Now, let's go make a deal. It's like doing a deal with the devil, is it not? Like I want to sing that the devil went down to Georgia and I want to get a fiddle out and I want to start playing that song. I'm not going to criticize Carney for the deal he made. I think Carney painted himself into that corner and had no way out. I think he had to do this. But I want to talk about what does that really mean for us in Canada? Royce, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be trade with China, and there's trade irritants that we should deal with. That's why the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, is there, because Saskatchewan exports a lot of products. We should deal with that. I think the concern here is the scope of what Carney is proposing, and it's sort of his presence in China. They're releasing videos of him walking in front of Chinese communist troops. He's talking about Canada participating in a, quote, new world order, which presumably would be led by China and its ally, Russia. And the thing that's offensive to me as a Canadian is that it was only a few months ago that Carney himself was talking about China as a threat to Canada, a foreign interference and a geopolitical threat to Canada. We know about foreign interference. We know about these Chinese police stations. We know about all of the ways that the Chinese regime has meddled in and undermined Canadian democracy, and to say nothing of business, trademarks, and all these issues. And yet, 9 months later, there he is proposing a comprehensive trade agreement. It's another example of where Mark Carney is going back on his word from the election campaign. He promised tariff relief with the United States. He hasn't gotten that. And that's a big reason why we are now embedding ourselves with the communist regime in China. It's because we haven't been able to get past the trade war with the United States, despite his promise that he was the man to do this. He was the person to get tariff relief. We were supposed to get it by July. We didn't. And so now he's off hunting for opportunities to replace the trade relationship with the United States. And it looks like we're hopping in bed with a regime that just a few months ago, even he recognized as being a threat to Canada.
Well, I don't think he's tried an awful lot to do a trade deal with the United States. I really don't. I say that with all sincerity. I look at the deal that he's made in China, where we'll take some, I think it's 40,000 of their EV cars. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that makes that much of a big deal, but they're going to take the canola, they're going to drop the tariff on that. I think that's great for Western Canadian farmers. But you are doing a deal with the devil. And that's not an insult to Chinese people. It's just that we know what's been going on. We know that they have warships in our waters. We know that they're sharing warships in our waters with Russia. I think, though, how does Carney? Let me talk about this with you, Lawrence. He did say that because somebody asked him say about the fact that he was against China a few months ago, and he said, "Well, the best way to fix a relationship of that sort and to make sure we're secure is to have a relationship with that country, to be closer to that country." Now, some will argue, have your enemies close or have your friends close and your enemies closer. Did he do that?
There's a lot to unpack here. It starts with how you said China, because no one can say China the same way since President Trump calls it China.
I know.
Um, so that's the first point. But seriously, though, it I've got to hold myself accountable a little bit because months ago, many months ago, I said that Mr. Carney needs to triangulate to get a deal with the US, with China. But he's gone about it completely wrongly, both with the United States and with China. I agree with everything Royce said that and there are going to be consequences for Mr. Carney, who
Yeah.
exactly as Royce said in the debate said that China was the biggest threat and risk and enemy, that's my word, but threat and risk to Canada. And now he's somewhat in bed with them. I know CBC and others have reported that there's now a deal for 49,000 Chinese EVs into Canada, and the dropping of canola seed duties to 15% by March, allegedly. We'll have to see if that's really true because Mr. Carney has a habit of saying things that turn out not to be true. So we'll see what actually happens with that. The consequences with the United States are stark. And China, for sure, is a dictatorial regime. The idea of talking with China isn't a bad one. I don't mind that. But that he had to use that to triangulate to get a deal with the US, not the other way around. And let's bear in mind that Mr. Carney's Brookfield had an enormous deal with the Bank of China for billions and billions of dollars.
Mhm.
That's sort of the undercurrent. That's just under the surface here. When he talked about the New World Order, that should
Harry,
be terrifically scary to Canadians and to our American friends and neighbors. And that is really our trade, our major trade relationship must be with the United States. So setting out a positive outlook with the US by triangulating with China is one thing, but he's done the exact opposite, setting us up against the United States to actually align with China. It's I don't know where this man and his government learned to negotiate. When you heard what Melanie Joly said in China, it's really, really appalling and sets us up completely on the wrong path. So
let me
uh,
mention this quote to you, Lawrence, and see what you think. Today in Beijing, Prime Minister Mark Carney says he is heartened by the leadership of the Chinese dictator, that Canada and Communist China can be strategic partners, including on the issues of security, and, as you said, invokes a new world order. What is that message to King Trump?
if I was President Trump or Secretary Rubio, this wouldn't stand, and there's going to be enormous consequences. There has we thought that Justin Trudeau was an ill-informed prime minister with poor planning and poor policies. Mr. Carney is an actual danger to Canadian sovereignty, an actual danger to Canada. The idea that the press are being told they have to have burner phones, not real phones, and then Mr. Carney or Ms. Joly suggests anything like that, these people don't. If this is a strategy to negotiate with President Trump to show muscle, it's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. It's so retrograde. It's really, really frightening. And I saw this somewhere. Apparently, there's some deal now with Chinese media, which is a propaganda arm of the communist dictators in China, with our tourism. They did this with Italy and infiltrated and undermined really the Italian government. And what do we think is going to happen in Canada?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
atrocious.
On the EV thing, I really hope people appreciate the incoherence of the government's approach. This is a government that has dropped hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of subsidies, of loans into the automaking industry to keep Canadian jobs in Canada, massive subsidies. And then what do? Go to China and negotiate a deal that'll see Canada saturated with electric vehicles. I know maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it'll create more options for Canada, but how much more incoherent can the government be? Just throwing out money like drunken sailors. It
Wait a
wasn't
minute.
that long
Wait a
ago.
minute. Wait a minute. We're not allowed to attack and insult the drunken sailors. I did last week. Drunken
I,
sailors are way ahead of these guys. You
I,
pointed it out.
I rightfully called you out on that.
You did.
So
You did.
apologies to drunken sailors once again. But I hope the Canadians remember it wasn't that long ago we had the story of the two Michaels, two Canadian citizens that were held hostage basically by the Chinese government as retaliation for Canada lawfully participating in an extradition case that the U.S. had against someone from Alway. It was a perfectly legitimate thing to do, and that government responded by holding two Canadian citizens. The judicial aspect of that was a joke, and they were released as soon as the government of China got its way. These are the people. This is the regime that we're now cozying up to. What a shocker.
I have a
May
couple
I
of
just point out,
couple of
sorry,
questions. Go
wait,
ahead. Point out.
I just want to point out one other thing. If you're an auto worker in Ontario, you should be just beside yourself appalled with what this will mean for your jobs. Royce is entirely right. Never mind the billions, literally billions of dollars that the Liberal government has thrown away to various automakers that then move jobs out of the province and out of the country. But beyond that, by importing these cars, which, by the way, heavily subsidized by the government of China in order to make this work there, to kill the market, the production market everywhere in North America and in the world. And that's what we're importing. It's a disaster for Ontario auto workers, for all the subsidiary organizations and entities that produce the parts for these cars, and that's what our government has decided to do.
Well,
It's atrocious.
the U.S. and Canada are going like this. They're getting further apart as Mark Carney is in office. We're getting further and further apart. I want to use a quote. Natural Resource Minister Tim Hodgson says he is in China because Canada and China share a goal on getting to net zero. I'm not sure if he realizes that China is the world's largest emitter of coal plant production. They
Of
were the
carbon.
largest in 2024, and they set a 10-year record for the most emissions from coal plant
Carbon.
production.
Yeah.
They're saying coal in the release here, but he does say that we believe we have lots of common interests with respect how to use clean energy to get there. I wasn't one of the discussions that we heard about. What clean energy are we going to use to get there? Here we are in this situation, yet again, I will say, I think he painted himself into this corner. There was really not much that Mark Carney could do because we've played the bully. I know a lot of people say, no, Trump's playing the bully with Canada, but right now we're kind of saying, we don't need you. We don't need you. We don't need you. But we're saying it quietly, like Canadians do, right? And we're not negotiating with them. I think, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I think this is going to drastically change the Kuzma negotiations that are about to get started in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's sabotaging them.
Yeah.
The reality is that Carney would never have been in China if he had successfully gotten a deal with Trump, as he promised he would do, as he said he would have done by last July. If that had happened, if we had fixed this problem, not even fixed it, like gotten to a better deal. Like there's still industries with 30% tariffs on them. here in Canada. If he had achieved that, he never would have been in China. This is a result of his inability to get through this with the Americans. And as you say, it's about to get a lot worse. We have now Donald Trump several times saying that he doesn't think Kuzma is really that important. Maybe he could just let it go. You think we're in rough shape now? In fact, these tariffs are fairly targeted to particular industries like automakers. If Kuzma goes, then Canada is in a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
And if Mark Carney is contributing to that by going to China through this, this sort of behavior that we've seen, that's a disaster. I posted something yesterday on X that obviously I'm not a liberal. I didn't vote for Carney, but when he won, I kind of felt like, well, at least he's experienced. At least we're going to get kind of competent leadership. It'll probably be like a Paul Martin kind of government,
a connected kind of guy.
Yeah, it's amazing how wrong I was, how wrong everyone was that thought that. It's just the incoherence, the damage that's being caused to Canada right now under the leadership of this guy, the Prime Minister. It's really shocking to me, and I mean that honestly. I know there's always a tendency to go to hyperbole. I really am shocked at how wrong I was about this person.
Well, we have a new airline now in Canada, Air Carney. He seems to go all over the world all the time, so it seems to be very busy. Air Carney is busy, but I agree. I think out of all the trips he's made, this is the one where he's actually made an announcement that we don't know if it's done yet, but he made an announcement of some help for Canadian farmers.
You know what else he's reported to have said? That China is a more predictable partner than the United States.
Oh.
What a dumb, I hate to use a pejorative term, although I really don't. What a dumb thing to say when we're beginning the renegotiation of Kuzma. And I unlike you, Royce, I didn't think he'd be good. I wasn't fooled by his resume. I thought it would be a disaster. Unlike Paul Martin, who had real business experience, who was a very good finance minister, and I thought a good prime minister temporarily. This guy has been a complete disaster, and this just takes us further down that same road of disaster. It's shocking to me how little the Liberals know about negotiation, as evidenced by their failure with Trump. They should have back in May, painted two paths for the Americans. One, with a positive relationship with a tariff deal, stopping Mr. Ford from his asinine commercial, setting up a positive path with the U.S. that aligns on foreign policy, on trade policy, etc., versus if we can't get there, you're leaving us with little alternative. We want to incent the United States to want to deal with us, and he's done exactly the opposite.
Yeah, but now Wab Kinew has done the exact same thing. Wab Kinew was at a press conference and came out and said that the United States is now a third world country and called on people to, push back against the government, push back against ICE. Like, I don't understand why this guy, as a premier in a province that needs more handouts than most, a province that is a have-not province, a province that is in more debt than the day he started, I think double, to be fair, is making comments and taking shots at the American government. I think you've got that happening. You've got Doug Ford doing his thing. You've got Carney now making a deal with Quebec. What's left? Who are they going to want to work with? Alberta will separate, become the 51st state. And I'm sure Saskatchewan will flow right into that because we're not making the right decisions. We're not making adult decisions when it comes to this. Yes, you may not like what's happening in the United States. That's their problem, not ours. We don't have a right to condemn them and call them a third world country for that. We just don't have that right. We don't want them telling us that we're a third world country. We don't want them coming after us because we can't get clean water in reserves across the country after spending billions and billions of dollars. I mean, they could come after us and call us a third world country for that. That's not an adult in the room, and that's not a professional in a position.
We can't buy a liberal fiat change our geography. It's always been the case that our major trading partner must be the United States. Our values, whether you hate or like the Trump administration, our values fundamentally align with those of the United States, of constitutional freedom, of free speech, et cetera, of human rights, of civil rights. And we're aligning with China. And we're allowing the liberals have allowed into Canada Iranian Republican National Guard people, hundreds and hundreds of them into Canada. That's who the liberals are aligning with. We're letting Gazans in without proper security checks. We're aligning with entirely the wrong morals, a lack of morals, and a lack of leadership that should really frighten Canadians. Will Canadians like the nonsense we hear from Premier Canoe and from Mr. Carney and Ms. Joly and the rest of them? I hope not. I think a number of them do, actually. I think a number of Canadians, and that this is, we've talked about this before, the two solitudes that are emerging, one group, one part of Canada, largely centered in Eastern Canada, is saying that this is great, elbows up, show the Americans we're better than them, completely illogically, all emotively, not logically, not based on evidence, and the other half saying, you're getting rid of our Canada. You've ruined or are ruining Canada and Canadian values. It's very frightening. And I agree, the concept, whether it's a 51st state or separatism, both in Quebec and in Alberta and maybe Saskatchewan, should be frightening, especially for, we've said this before too, Manitobans that got $5 billion in transfer payments, second highest in Canada last year, and doubling of our deficit to, what was it, $1.6 billion from what the NDP promoted. Talk about a third world country. Try going to an emergency room in Winnipeg and see if you're in a third world country. You are.
You are.
It's appalling.
It's interesting to me that we would have the discussion about, about these different political issues with the NDP and, what other premiers are doing. We still have a problem. You have Doug Ford saying he's not going to sell Crown Royal. And then you've got Wab Kinew saying, well, it's a Manitoba project. We got to try to change his mind. And Wab Kinew now going on record. Well, he makes all kinds of these statements and he's forced to go back on them. I mean, we're falling apart. We're not coming closer together. We're not getting stronger together. We are falling further apart. And I think my fear, and now, Royce, I want to put this to you as a political science professor. What is the chances that we get into bed with China and all of a sudden the security concern for the United States becomes much worse and we're in the middle of a fight?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And even some of the pronouncements that have been made since Carney went to China, we are going to be working directly with the Chinese regime on security issues. There's 0% chance that the Trump administration is not going to take note of that and take a very dim view of it. This is hurting our future prospects. Some of what Lawrence said, I think it's really important and we should emphasize it. There's a reason that Canada has such a long-standing and successful trade relationship with the United States. It's because the United States is obviously a massive market for our goods. They're proximate, they're right there, it's easy to export stuff. But there's a bigger reason. That is that the US is an old democracy. It's a constitutional democracy. Contracts are actually enforceable in the United States. It's reliable in all of those ways. That's not true in China. In China, you can have two Canadians kidnapped until the regime gets its way on behalf of one of its subsidiary corporations. And so the important thing for the government of Canada to do is to fix the relationship with the US, not try to replace it with these terrible substitutes. Friction with the US is not new. Every few decades, Canada goes through a period of protectionism in the United States. We have to grapple with this issue, but we always come out stronger in the end. And this is what the government needs to be dealing with. As for Wab Kinew, we don't, just as a general point, like I think I've said this on this podcast so many times, Manitoba has lots of problems. We elected this government to fix our problems, not to comment, not to provide commentary on a foreign state and things that are happening in the domestic politics of the United States. Focus on us. And for goodness sake, if you are going to comment, not right now, not in the current environment. This is a place where, as you say, Kevin, we need our leaders to actually act like leaders, to exercise some discretion. This is not the right time to be commenting on internal U.S. politics. As we've seen, the Americans actually respond. They actually pay attention to that. They actually respond to it to our detriment. I really would like to see the premier show some self-control.
You know, I remember taking a psych class in school, right? And one of the ideas and concepts we had talked about, and it really didn't hit me at first, but the more I listened to the prof, it was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get this, was we need to take the stage away, right? Adults and leaders in the room, remove the stage. So if we're continuously sitting there and firing shots back at Donald Trump, if we blamed him for the cost of milk when he has absolutely nothing to do with the cost of milk, NDP, oh, we're going to keep the cost of a quart of milk right where it is. We're going to make life cheaper for everybody. All right. I mean, he did that and he blamed it on the U.S. tariffs. I think that we've got to get off that stage. We've got to stop giving Trump that stage because that fuels the fire, that fuels the power, if you will, that fuels him. And here we are playing right into it. I mean, Doug Ford played right into it. I'm going to raise hydro prices into the U.S. and fix that. And then Trump in a minute changed that. No, you're not. Threatened him and it got changed. So we look bad. I want to switch in now a little bit more towards what's going on provincially. I want to talk about, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about Minneapolis. But we had an issue in Manitoba politics where the progressive conservative leader took to social media to bar a member of the party and a board member of the party, just recently voted on board member of the party, Patrick Allard, and to say that he will not be allowed to run for office. He will not be allowed to be a part of this. And they're looking at a way to get him, deal with him on the board. And he said something along the lines on social media as, hey, if we have an ice in Canada, where do I sign up? Now, I'm going to play you a clip of the progressive conservative leader right now who said that he would never, ever get involved with picking and choosing who runs for the party.
2.5 years, and I am committed to fixing this party, to working with our members, to bringing people on board on this party, under this tent, not choosing to drive a bus and pick who I decide to gets on this party and who I decide doesn't. That's not for the leader to decide. This is a party that's going to represent conservative values for any Manitoban that wants to join it. That is what we need to get back to, listening to our members, taking the decisions out of the back room and opening it up with accountability and transparency for all of you.
So which one do you believe? Do you believe the Abicon of today or do you believe the Abicon of yesterday? Which is the right one? Which person? Will the real Abicon please stand up?
I know you won't like this, but I want to jump back for 1 second to a couple things on China. I think it's so critically important that it's worthy of a couple more comments. Canada is part of Five Eyes, an intelligence gathering system with the United Kingdom and the United States, Australia, New Zealand. If I was the United States, I would be so concerned about what is going on with Canada and China. I don't know how that relationship is going to continue and the implications of that falling out, unless it's another one of those cases of keep your friends closer and your enemies closer. Other than that, I would be very concerned and concerned as Canadians for what that will mean. The other thing I was going to say is, in terms of the premier, why he's commenting, if you have no ability to run an economy, which he's proven that he doesn't, why not talk about Mr. Trump and why not insult the United States? That's the cheapest, easiest thing to do to rally certain people. Now,
let's get back to the PC.
Yeah, back to PC or to PC. I want to say this, and it does tie in, and I'm sorry for doing this to the Minneapolis situation. Mr. Allard, who I met once, I don't know him. He made the comment about ICE, and I think it's fair to say that the situation with ICE and the woman who was killed in Minnesota is incredibly sad. It's sad on many levels, and that doesn't mean, before people comment, that I support in any way what she did. But it's sad, no matter how you slice it, that a woman, that anybody would think that law enforcement officers, which is what ICE are, who are armed in the United States, somehow that it's okay to interfere with them or try to drive over them, or that they wouldn't defend themselves. And this woman gets killed. And it's super sad. And it's sad how things are divided. So should Mr. Allard have made this dark humor comment? Is it poor taste? Absolutely. It is. And I think back also to what Ms. Nahanni Fontaine, what Minister Fontaine said about Charlie Kirk, and what Mr. Canoe did with that, which is nothing. He asked for a hollow apology, which is what she gave. She's not a reticent. She's learned nothing after she insulted Mr. Kirk the day he was shot and killed. And nothing happened to her, essentially. Whereas Mr. Allard is told, you're done. Can't run, can't do anything. I get it. I get that the PCs want to stand up and say, we're the party of ethics and morals. And if someone says something in such poor taste, we're done. Hang on, I get that sales point. I understand that. But is it the right thing to say to the people of Point Douglas or wherever it was he was going to run in North Winnipeg, is it right to say to them, you don't get to choose this guy because he made a post in bad taste, as opposed to following the path of saying, Mr. Allard, can you clarify that this is dark humor? And maybe he did that on social media, I'm not sure. But I'm not sure it's the right look. I get why they're trying to do it. And again, it may be Mr. Allard, maybe the party finds him difficult in some other way. I'm not sure. I don't know him. But it's an interesting question. Royce, what do you think?
You're dancing, Lawrence. You're dancing. You don't want to come out hard. You're not coming out hard. You're not coming out soft. You're kind of dancing around it. When the leader says months before or weeks before, I don't know when that video was done, that he will not personally get involved with the selection of candidates, then he should not personally get involved with the select. He did it for a media spotlight. Let's be honest. That should have been something the president of the party did. That should have been something the selection committee did for the party. That has nothing to do with the leader of the party. That is the leader of the party trying to wield a little bit of power, right? Trying to get a little bit of recognition and see if he can take down Wab Kinew at the same time. There are processes in place, and adults are supposed to follow processes. Let the system work. Do not get involved in that. That's how I see that.
I'm going to disagree with one thing. I don't know if if Abhi said, look, I'll never get involved with that. That's not the right position to take, because frankly, if there was a candidate who said something, I don't know, against whatever, something really offensive, and Mr. Allard, from what I read, it was poor taste. Was it really offensive? No. And if you compare it to Ms. Fontaine, really not offensive at all, frankly. But should the leader always say, I won't say anything? We could have, a Ku Klux Klan member come up and I'm not going to do anything. That's a silly position to take, in my view. If that's what he said, which I don't know, I didn't see that. But if that's what he said, that's not the right position. I guess I'd like to be better informed. I'm not I wouldn't have done what happened here to Mr. Allard personally. But I don't know. There might be some inside politics, as we say here, if you know Mr. Allard, which I don't, and you know the party, which I do. So there might be something else going on. Royce, what do you think? And I don't think I'm dancing. If it is, it's a slow waltz.
A bit of a tango.
Tango, maybe? Okay.
Yeah. Look, if we're going to hold Mark Carney accountable for saying one thing and then doing the opposite, I have to be consistent, say the same thing about Abhi. If you make promises, you should stand by them. That having been said, if someone is going to be associated with a party, if someone is going to have a title, they're going to publicize that, then you should expect some discipline. You should be expected to be held to some standard, if not even morally, just practically, because of course we all know that the NDP's little minions were all over Patrick Allard's Facebook page, all over his social media, looking for precisely this sort of thing. And so, an MLA, a member of parliament, they don't post this kind of stuff. They might think it, they might say it, but they're not posting it precisely because they're a member of a party and they know that they're subject to discipline. The thing that annoys me about this kind of thing is that we need people that are principled conservatives that are actually make the case for strong borders, for border enforcement. That we're going to end up with people in the United States, in Canada, who are here, who shouldn't be here, who need to be removed from the country. That's just the way it is. What does that look like? How are the best ways that we can do that? And why is it important? Why is border enforcement important? Let's have principled arguments, make the case, convince people. These little kind of throwaway comments. Being on the right doesn't mean you're a troll. We need more people that are principled, that are actually able to advance and persuade on these issues, not these kinds of comments. It wasn't that bad, but I mean, in the context of what had happened 3 days earlier, why? What is the point?
Here's my point on this, and I'm going to go back to somebody who was within a party for a long time, but was in that party situation and been in civic politics. There is a process in place, and if you're a professional and you're an adult, you follow the process. You don't come out, make a snap decision and pretend like you can make all the calls, because you can't. As the leader of the party, you have a board that you report to. There's a board, there's a selection board, a selection committee that makes these decisions, and the leader's not on there. For sure, we know in the background and behind closed doors, the leader can certainly say, I really don't want this person on our team. And I'm sure they can make that happen through the process. But it should have been allowed to have been done through the process, because at this particular point in time, he's not running for the next election, Patrick Allard. He's not running for the next election. And right now, the party, I think, is in a dilemma because it's trying to figure out what it is. Are we a conservative right party? Are we a center right leaning? Are we a conservative lefty party? Are we more left leaning than center, or more left leaning than we are to the right? And they're sending mixed messages. I think that if you're the leader of a political party, let the process and let the professionals in the background deal with these issues, and you focus on becoming the next government. You have to show that you're the next leader in waiting. This doesn't show that to you. If we're going to react to every social media post, if we're going to react to every negative comment, we are done. We are toast. That's not what a strong leader does. That's not what a professional does. So I think that this was wrong. I think it was wrong to get involved, but I think it was ego. I think it was ego that brought him out and said, oh, that's it. I'm Bobby Khan and he's not going to be running. And that's how I see that. And I think that is as much of a problem as what Patrick Allard may have done and may have said on social media. But there are people. There's checks and balances within every political party to stop those people from being on the ballot. And that's where I think it should have laid.
I'm going to disagree with you, respectfully. I'm going to disagree with you and say this. There's no question that Mr. Palliser decided who was going to run and who wasn't.
He never did it publicly.
No, he did it privately, but he did it absolutely and demanded that the people running. Fine. Hang on. And he demanded the people running met certain criteria that I don't need to get into now in order to run. The point is, I want a leader who says, look, if someone's going to say, and I'm not saying Mr. Allard did this, but if someone's going to say hateful stuff, Ku Klux Klan stuff, Nazi stuff, Hamas stuff, or whatever, you're not running for us. You're done. You're not running for our party. That is leadership for me. I don't know why Mr. Khan would have said historically, if he said, look, I'm never going to interfere. I want a leader who's got the video, I accept that. I want a leader who's got moral spine and courage of his convictions and stands up to do what is right. That's the leader I do want. I also want, because you touched on this, Kevin, I think this is spot on. I want a real conservative party, a fiscally intelligent conservative party that's also socially intelligent. That's what we need in Manitoba. Mm-hmm. I hope we have that. I don't know if we have that. but that's what we need. And Mr. Lard did say he was going to run. He did complain that I heard this after all of this controversy. I heard him say that we have a progressive party, not a conservative party. I don't say that he's right. I don't know that he's right. The people I know in the party are conservative people. They are fiscally intelligent. They are socially open, and they're saying we don't want the government interfering in our bedrooms and our lives. We want less a government. Those are the people I know. Doesn't mean there aren't other people that aren't like that. Those are the people I know in the party. So it depends. I certainly have a problem with a leader who says this is where I'm going to draw the line, but I won't draw the line on other issues. So, and I do think it makes sense to stand up and say we're different than the NDP, who allows all this moral decay and they do nothing about it, like Ms. Fontaine. I like that we have a party that says, no, we're going to stand up for what's right. I don't know that this was the hill to do this on.
You know what?
That's the problem I have.
I want an opposition party that's going to do their job. And they're not doing their job. They're not acting like the opposition. They're playing politics. This is all this virtue signaling. That's all this is. And I'm so tired of it. I'm done with the virtue signaling. It's not helping our country. We had 10 years under Trudeau of virtue signaling. Look where we are now. We're getting in bed with China. We don't know what that's going to look like. It could be the greatest thing in the world, but it could be the worst thing in the world. But we're getting in bed with China. I am tired. I don't want politicians anymore that are just virtue signaling, going out and doing the pictures and the handshakes and going to the different cultural events and all this. Get to work. There's people dying in our emergency rooms. I want to hear about that every day when you're in session, when you're in the legislature. I don't want you asking Canoe about what he said on Twitter. I don't care. I want you working towards, why is the deficit? What are you doing about the deficit? I want you to be that person that is relentless. I would have an entire day in question period asking the same question over and over and over and over. What are you doing to get minerals out of the ground? Give me a specific. Give me a time. That is what the government should be doing when you're in opposition, not playing virtue signaling.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah,
I agree with all that.
Yeah, I think the point about process is a fair one. We have a process for dealing with these sorts of things, and maybe kind of separate the fact that Allard was this regional director for the party versus he was a candidate. There's a big vetting process for candidates that he would have gone through. I don't think Obi needed to say, we're going to ban this person as a candidate. The question is, if you have a title, if you've got this regional director thing with the party, you have to be accountable for what you say online. You're not a free agent. And, so maybe Obi or someone from the party could have met with this guy and said, like, look, this is a problem. We've got all this energy. We want you to do this work for the party, but you have to consider these sorts of things rather than just giving him the boot at the first sign.
But that's the type of thing I was talking about, where I don't know that inside story. That's why I think Kevin said I was dancing, because that may have happened. It may not have happened. We just don't know. And if it happened and Mr. Lard said, I'm not doing anything, maybe he doubled down, maybe he didn't, who knows? Then there may be some basis to this that we don't see.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I'm going to get the final word on this one. The reality that I see here is that it was a waste of time. It was an ego play. It was just trying to get likes. It was trying to get follows. That's all this was. It's very obvious to me, especially as someone in the media, and you see this happening, and somebody who's been in politics, and you hear people talk about this kind of stuff. You got to focus on what's real. You got to focus on the real problems happening in Manitoba. Let's pivot from Manitoba politics, and let's talk a little bit about the NDP and where their brand is showing up. Lawrence, you're writing a column on this that will be available on winnipegsun.com. It's free right now, everybody, and the paywall is going to be going up soon because we've gone through our month of testing. So, and I want to say our e-edition subscriptions, guys, just so you know, had a huge jump in January. So well done. for the Winnipeg Sun. We're very happy about that. It's $9.99 a month. You get full access to the website, and you get the e-edition, which has articles in the e-edition that you won't find online. So it's like special articles that you'll get on in the e-edition, and vice versa. You'll find articles on the website that you won't find in the e-edition. So it's important to have both of them. But anyways, I all of a sudden became a commercial. But I want to go back to Lawrence, your column, and something that is happening with the NDP. So fill us in.
I will do that, and I want to say though before I do that that what you commented on the role of the opposition, I want to see exactly the same thing. I want to hear them talk about the economy. I want to hear them talk about their plans. I want to hear them talk about less a government is better government. I want to hear them talk about the problem of supply management and this nonsense of the keeping milk at the highest price in 2026. That's what I want to hear about. I don't want to hear about this other dreck. Okay, now back to this story. This is an unbelievable thing to me. There's a poster out that says the NDP has their logo on this poster, although they're trying to bury it now, that says January 29th is the day that we commemorate, if that's the right word, the terrible things dealing with Islamophobia. But what specifically do they say is Islamophobic? The war in Gaza as an incident of Islamophobia, and, you'll love this, the Bondi Beach massacre in Australia of Jews. And this is the most atrocious, disgusting cultural appropriation and hijacking of Jewish tragedy that you can imagine. And it even calls into question, is Islamophobia, if that's Islamophobia, Islamophobia has no meaning at all. Because the fact is,
where is this happening?
At the legislature.
Oh my!
And the NDP have their logo on the poster. Now, of course, people have reached out to Mike Morose and to Carla Compton, Mike being a cabinet minister and Carla being the NDP MLA in Tuxedo, and said, how can this be? This is offensive. This is terrible. So now apparently the NDP they're still having the event, but they've asked that their logo be removed, but they're hosting the event. It's the same stupid, disgusting it's moral decay that the NDP is bringing in. And it's that thing, Kevin, you've talked about before. I think all three of us have, that concept of division, divide people, promote certain things, not other things, and take over narratives. And that is not the role of government. And it also ties in, just one last point, to this Islamophobia curriculum that they're imposing. One of the things essentially that it's designed to do isn't to say, let's stop hate against all people, but it's specifically designed to promote Islam. And we talked about this last week. And this is just a terrible abuse of students and a terrible abuse of what education is supposed to be. Arguably, it even breaches the legislation and existing policies. But this notion that the NDP are supporting this idea that the Bondi Beach massacre is an example of Islamophobia, or that the war in Gaza, even if you don't like how Israel conducted their part of the war, it was a response to a horrific attack caused by Hamas. That's not Islamophobia. No. It's not an irrational fear of Islam.
No.
So it's really offensive, should be offensive to all Manitobans. And
but here's the problem yet again, right? Politicians that are activists, they have absolutely no idea how to manage an economy or how to govern. They know how to be activist. And that's what they're doing here. They're just getting behind. Let's be an activist on this. Let's be an activist on that. I don't know why I'm like this today. Maybe I had too much coffee. But I am so tired with this political and social engineering and political parties getting behind the division that's happening there. It's like they do better if there's more division in our country. I want to see leaders for Canada that actually want to help Canada. I want to see leaders in Manitoba that actually want to help Manitoba. We're all Manitobans. That's how I see us. I don't see anybody as anything different than a Manitoban, period. It doesn't matter to me where you're born. You live here now. We're all one. We're on the same team. We wear the same jersey. And when governments start doing this, That's the problem. Why are we in deficits? Because we hand money out to all these different groups. We give cash to everyone. Nothing gets done because we give so much money out to other groups to cause division. But again, they're not there supporting the Christians that were killed in Africa, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not familiar with what Lawrence is talking about, but it does sound very concerning. One thing I've heard a lot about is an exhibit that is either going to be showing up or is already there at Canadian Mennonite University here in Winnipeg about Palestine that is apparently very, very politicized. This just goes back to what you were just saying, Kevin. I think that we should always feel like we can push back against these things based on our values, based on our principles, see some of these things as divisive, and we should push back on them as much as we can. I know a lot of people are concerned about that exhibit, and they feel they can't really do a whole lot about it.
Hmm.
That's exactly right, actually. There is an exhibit that I'm not sure if it's being put on or is already on at the Mennonite University. The Canadian Human Rights Museum is another one that's going to, in June, be putting on really an offensive exhibit talking about, at least it seems to be, that the creation of the State of Israel is a catastrophe or Nakba and a human rights violation when no one actually says it's a human rights violation at all, and it wasn't. It was a UN vote that the other Arab nations then declared war on Israel. So it's way outside the mandate of what the Human Rights Museum is supposed to do, and this is all part of the same NDP-inspired leftist coalition with Muslim fundamentalists. And I got to say, there was an Islamic hero at Bondi Beach, actually, who fought the terrorists. The only Muslim person who died was the terrorist. But there's a Muslim guy who actually fought them, and somehow they're claiming this is Islamophobia. It really denigrates, never mind the Jewish people, but there are victims of of hate against Muslims in Canada. There was that mosque in Quebec that was attacked. There was that family in Ontario. But this minimizes all of that. It makes people think nothing is real. And that's a disservice to all Manitobans. Kevin, I agree with you. Ideally, we should all be wearing the same jersey and helping each other. But if you can't, as you said, and as I've said, if you can't run an economy, if you can't do anything else, let's divide the people and let's choose the sides that we want to vote on, and let's interfere in people's lives more.
Yeah.
Let's control people's lives. And now I'm going to tie that back in. What government in the world interferes with people's lives and controls them? Is it China? Is that who we're in bed with now?
I'm glad you brought that in. I want to end on that, and I'm glad you brought it in. I want to end because I've heard a few national radio talk shows talking about it, and I've seen some polls online and other pundits talking about the becoming an American state, Canada becoming part of the United States, and how people are starting to come around to the idea. But here's what I have to ask most people. I hear a lot of people, of course, the far, far left, far, far right are both far, far away. And they have their own ideals and they're kind of wackadoodle, right? They're out in the far, far reaches of the lands. But what would you rather have? And this is a serious question. I'm asking not only you two gentlemen, but I'm asking everyone who watches this show that we appreciate so much. Would you rather be a part of the United States, or would you rather be a part of China? Because it very well could come down to that, where China, we count on China as much as we counted on the United States. And maybe more so if we've made an enemy with the United States, we're going to need China military to help us because we're in no position to fight a war. We're in no position to push back. What happens to our borders? Longest border in the world, unguarded. What happens to that? So what would you rather be? Would you rather make the deal with the United States, the devil you know, or make the deal with China, the devil you don't? Royce.
Well, Canada would never be the 51st state. I mean, no one wants it here, and no one wants it in the United States either.
Oh no, that's not what I'm hearing on talk shows, Royce. Everyone's talking about, well, if they give me my any money that I have in RSPs and they make it US dollars, I'd go. I mean, why get into this? We can't afford to be the way we are.
No, what we do need is to fix our trade relationship with the U.S. and to look into further economic integration, a further integration of our economies. That makes sense. This idea that the U.S. is going to take over Canada, give me a break. Where they didn't even take over Venezuela. They just swooped in and took the president and then took off again. Canada will never be the 51st state, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a good economic relationship with the U.S. We should.
Canada
I don't
or
think-
China? Wait, Canada or China, Royce? Or I'm sorry, the USA or China? Which one?
USA.
USA. All right.
I don't accept the premise behind.
Stop being a politician. And
I'm not being a politician. I'm being a lawyer. Know who you're insulting. So what I'm saying though is this: I think there is a real risk down the road that part of what is now Canada might become a state, actually, either an independent state or some sort of alignment with the United States, whether a state or territory or whatever. There's a real risk of that, I think. But China will, like the United States would never allow Chinese military in Canada. None of that is going to happen. So it's not really a question. As to what you're really asking is, what a horrible future if China actually controls more of our economy. And I agree with that entirely. That notion of the control of people's lives, both surreptitiously and overtly, is terrible.
Lawrence.
And that's what China does.
Lawrence.
So our values are aligned with, whether you like the administration in Canada or the US is a different question. Our values are the same as American values. That's our family.
So what is it?
Would
Would you rather make a deal with the devil you know, being the United States,
The United
or do you want to
States-
make a deal with the devil you don't know, China?
We know who both are. The United States is not a devil. We know what China is. They're interfering in our politics. They're undermining our
I'm
security
not calling
system.
it's a figure of speech. The devil you know,
No,
the
I'm
devil you
going
don't.
further. China is the devil, not the United States, and there's no question.
So you're
There's no
saying
question.
United States, that's who you want them to make the deal with.
Our values are the same as the American Constitution, or very similar to the American Constitution. That's our family, not the controlling communist dictatorship in China. And for us to be stupid enough to think differently, if anyone does, it's a more than a category error. It's an insult to all of our Canadian history and reality, and we better smarten up.
It's also, I don't think Canada will be the 51st state, but, if Alberta votes to separate or comes close to voting to separate, then I'm not sure.
Can we go back to being Upper Canada?
Rupert's land.
Rupert's Land. Yeah, we're now Rupert's Land here.
They're going to change the name. Rupert's Land. We'll call it Justin Land. Yeah, you may raise a valid point there, Royce. But I mean, the question's pretty simple, and I want to put that to the people that take the time to watch this podcast, who we appreciate very much. Who do you want them to make the deal with? Do you want them to make the deal with the United States? Because there's a lot of left-leaning people that watch this podcast, and we appreciate you. Do you want the deal with China, or do you want the deal with the United States? Here's my point. The deal with the United States, they will have a new president in 2.5 years, and it could change.
Yeah.
Deal with China could be there for a very, very, very long time.
Wait a
Very
minute.
long time.
Mr. Xi is only president for life in China.
Right. But
Yeah,
I
I
mean, that's the reality, right? Because you're going to have all these people going, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. Think about this. And I want to talk about this on the next show. I want to see how many comments we get. And it's pretty simple. China or the United States? Who do you want Canada to make a deal with?
I'm going to invite people to look beyond the existing administration, whether in the United States or Canada or China or really anywhere, and look at the systems underlying it. The thing that Royce said is what I was alluding to. There is a path in which some part of Canada gets aligned in some way with the United States, whether as a state or something else. But think about the systems. think about who we are as a people, what our values are.
Yeah.
That's the way you think about this.
Look
Well,
at Canadian history. It's far from the first time that we've gone through something like this, and we came out of it, and we're stronger as a result.
but right now, I think we've had 10 years of some pretty poor mismanagement of our country. We
Yeah.
can't sustain the path that we're on. Financially, we can't sustain the path that we're on. We can't continue to print money at the rate that we're printing money. One of the major projects that Carney announced had a big announcement this week that they think they'll get shovels in the ground in 2040. Like, what?
Yeah.
Anyways, but there are some serious things we have to consider, and we have to consider. Unfortunately, we have to consider the sustainability of our spending and our social programs. So, what do you want to do? Do you want to make a deal with the United States? You want to get down there and make the deal we have to make for the next 2.5 years? Or do you want to make it with China? Which one do you think is right? Because you
I
can't have both. I'm going to tell you right now, you can't have both. And I can't wait to see what our viewers say. I'm looking forward to that.
I just want to say two things. One is there are some countries that do have some economic deals with China and larger alignment with the United States. It is possible if handled correctly, which our liberal government doesn't seem able to do. And I also want people to know what Royce said. Historically, we've had lots of conflict with the U.S. You remember, no one will remember, in the 60s, President Johnson actually had Prime Minister Pearson on his ranch, held him by the collar, lifted him up, and like held him against a wall physically. He was so angry with him. And certainly Kennedy had problems with Diefenbaker. And I think Mr. Nixon, President Nixon, called Trudeau the first. Am I allowed to swear, Kevin?
No.
He called him an a-hole. And it's actually recorded on some of the Watergate tapes. So, or some of the White House tapes. So, there's a history of that, but always we've been able to overcome it. And when you look at what Mr. Mulroney did with Mr. Reagan and Mr. Bush, that's how you deal with the United States. That's what you have. You have to have intelligent dealing. Mr. Harper did that too. Um, we have to get better.
And that's what we thought we were getting with Mark Carney.
Yeah.
That's what we were promised. And it's just the biggest disappointment.
All right. We look forward to seeing your comments on this. So the United States or China, if you have a little more feedback you want to give it, great. Look forward to hearing that as well. Also, we want to thank you for watching, but please follow our YouTube channel, push that like button, and please enjoy yourself over the next few days. We'll be back with more of Inside Politics next week. Gentlemen, take care. I look forward to reading your columns at winnipegsun.com.
Thanks for watching Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Please like and subscribe to this channel and visit thewinnipegssun.com for more.